He is known for coming through when people are down, and I know this to be the legs a lot more because it has everything to do with the central nervous system.
Oh no, no. Annette Funicello choked. She didn't just feel crippled, she felt boxed in all her life. Disney princess, America's sweetheart, the icon of millions of 1960s teenagers, but behind that innocent smile was a hell that had been locked away since she was 12. She was forbidden to love, forbidden to rebel, forbidden to grow up. A famous lover kept her hidden like a dirty secret. An angelic co-star replaced her without warning.
Call us a couple of missing links. Love all his monkey shines. Every day is Valentine.
And the studio that created her drowned her in loneliness, in control, in collapse. By the end of her life, Annette had only 5 names left, 5 stab wounds that she could never forgive. Who was the man she hated the most? Who was the woman who sent her flowers but stabbed her in the back with a smile? And who was the lover who wrote love songs to humiliate her in front of the whole of America? Step into the shadows behind the spotlight, where a Disney princess is betrayed by the very people who built her kingdom, and once you're in, there's no turning back. If you're hooked, like the video, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next episode. The biggest shocker is yet to come. Annette Funicello, the perfect American girl, the American angel, the Disney princess that everyone loves. But behind that smile, there is not a fairy tale, but a sentence. Born on October 22, 1942 in Utica, New York, Annette came to this world with an angelic face and a destiny carved in gold. But what no one expected was that the gold would bleed. At only 12 years old, she became the star of the Mickey Mouse Club, the place where every American child dreamed of standing with. But while the whole country was cheering, a velvet cage had silently locked her up. Disney did not create princesses, Disney created hostages. She had to wear long-sleeved shirts to the beach, and was forbidden to film kissing scenes, even when her co-star was her real-life lover. And Walt Disney, the man who was worshipped as a saint, once coldly declared, "Annette is a symbol of purity, and I will not let anyone destroy that, not even her." Haircut must be approved, shirts must be worn, must be asked, emotions must be expressed, also need approval, but that is only the tip of the iceberg. Behind the stage lights, she was hated, rumored to sleep to climb high, preyed on by male co-stars twice her age. She once refused Elvis Presley, not because she did not want to, but because Disney forbade it. She fell backstage in pain, no one called a doctor. A co-star just stood there and laughed. By the end of the 1980s, Annette received a death sentence. Multiple sclerosis, a disease that gradually killed every muscle, every smile, every sound in her voice. She could not lift a glass of water. Could not pronounce a complete sentence. And the most painful thing was being treated like an old, outdated toy, forgotten by the very people who once hailed her as a legend. People once said she should die, to stay beautiful as in her memories. And before she left, Annette did something she had never dared to do in her life: write down 5 names. 5 names. Without explanation. Without mercy. Without forgiveness. Each name was a thunderbolt that struck Hollywood. A lover who was never sincere. A co-star who turned her into a laughing doll. A colleague who smiled while stabbing her in the back. And one, Walt Disney. The man she called, the most dishonest man I ever knew. Annette never wrote his name in her final notebook. Because he did not deserve to be mentioned, even when cursed. She wrote only 3 words in capital letters, in black ink: The Witch. Not a nickname, but an accusation. Walt Disney, the man who created magic, the man who discovered her, the man who once declared to all of America, Annette is the most wonderful girl in America. And she always will be. But no one knew, he was the one who tore her soul apart, piece by piece, behind the red velvet curtains. Disney did not scream, did not insult, he only smiled, and killed the will with a frown. He didn't need to say anything, he just took one look and I knew I was wrong. She had said it, with a fear that had never been quenched. At first, she thought it was a father's love. But no, he did not love her, he loved the image he had created of her, a plastic princess, immobile, unable to cry, unable to be angry, unable to be human. She was not allowed to love, not to grow up, not to rebel. Every time she wanted to change her hairstyle, she had to ask 3 people for permission. When she wanted to try a villain role, she was rejected. Even wearing a backless dress, it was a sin. As soon as the rumors about her and Paul Anka leaked, Disney immediately sent a legal team to shut down the press, demanding that they stop ruining the image of a teen star. They didn't protect her. They protected the product. Then came the Beach Party series, where her image was completely crushed. When she wanted to stop, Disney didn't negotiate. They gave her a gold ring engraved with an A. And said, "You're not going anywhere. You belong to us." And she stayed, not out of loyalty, but out of fear. Then came the fateful day, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She wrote in her diary, "I lost control of my arms and legs. But the truth is, I have never had control of my life. Walt Disney took it away from me at the age of 12. It wasn't gratitude, it was a diamond prison, and the cruelest thing. She didn't hate him because he was cruel. She hated him because he was so good at making the world believe he was an angel." To Annette, Walt Disney didn't work miracles. He was the most ruthless magician Hollywood had ever known. And that's just the first name. Don't look away. Next, she'll expose a famous co-star who stole her youth and always played the perfect victim. Frankie Avalon, the golden symbol of America. But for Annette Funicello, he was not a summer lover, but a nightmare that lasted all her youth. People called him the king of the beach, the eternal face, the national sweetheart. But for Annette, he was a shadow that weighed down all her dreams of liberation. He was the name that made her lose her youth and her voice. When she left Disney, her heart was full of hope. She thought that the Beach Party movies would be a new beginning, a mature Annette, a real woman. But the biggest mistake of her life was believing that Frankie would be her companion. "I'm not a co-star, just a prop for his performance." Annette didn't just play with Frankie, she was controlled by him. Every angle, every outfit, every line. Once, she asked to wear a 2-piece bikini like the other co-stars, the director said yes. But the next day, Frankie walked into the dressing room, coldly threw the bikini into the bin and said, "You are Annette, not Jane Mansfield. You wear this." A crude wetsuit, covering her from neck to knees. At the time, she thought it was protection. But when she became pregnant with her first child, Frankie asked the producers to cut all close-ups of Annette. The reason? She is no longer attractive. No longer attractive, 3 words like a knife cut straight into the belly of a woman carrying a small life. Annette wrote, "He didn't need to scream, just smiled at the camera, then glanced at me with a look, as if I were a blemish in his perfect frame. Day by day, I faded away, and he was always in the middle of the frame." On a talk show in 1983, Frankie once said, "I love Annette like a sister." Annette laughed, not a happy laugh. It was the laughter of a woman nailed to the stage by the very brother she once trusted. Frankie Avalon, the face of American youth. But to Annette Funicello, he was the silent director of a never-ending tragedy. Not a word of apology, not a trace of remorse, and for that, Annette hated Frankie Avalon more than all her public enemies. Because he didn't stab her with a knife, he strangled her with silence, wrapped in velvet. And the third name? A woman who once called her sister. And it was that woman who cut the deepest. If Frankie Avalon was the iron fist that controlled everything on set, Shelley Fabares was the cold blade hidden behind the soft velvet, the one that made Annette Funicello feel small, even when the cameras stopped rolling. On screen, they were best friends, 2 Disney princesses smiling in the golden sunshine, shaking their hips to vibrant beach music. But behind the lens, Shelley was a poisonous wind blowing through every crack of trust. And Annette knew, she was living next to someone who laughed when you bled. She wrote in her diary, she didn't have to shout, didn't have to throw chairs. She just happened to stand next to the director, whisper a few words, and then watch me fall. One day, while filming a running scene on the beach, Annette tripped over the sand and fell flat on her face. Her knees were bleeding, her hands were scraped, and the whole camera crew rushed to help her. But Shelley? She just stood there, crossed her arms, smiled and clapped her hands. "Nice fall, Annette." maybe you should apply for an Emmy." A light remark. But to Annette, it was a dagger straight to her self-esteem. Later that day, Shelley sent a bouquet of white flowers to her room. The card read, "You are my inspiration. Get well soon." Annette kept that card for more than 30 years. Not because she was emotional, but because she wanted to remind herself, never believe words that smell like perfume. But the deepest cut did not stop there. Annette was once considered for the female lead in a hit TV series, a role that could destroy the Disney doll image, paving the way for a real acting career. But a few days before signing the contract, the phone rang. On the other side was the producer. "We chose Shelley, she was sharper, more mature." That night, Annette smashed the mirror in the dressing room. She looked at the pieces and wrote, "I am just a singing doll," and Shelley was the one who whispered it to all of Hollywood. She did not laugh at my dead body, she gave flowers, and tied ribbons. In public, Annette still hugged Shelley, still smiled at Disney reunions, still shrugged when asked about her close friend. But in her hidden notebook, she wrote, "She did not kill me with a sword, she killed me with ribbons, eyes, and poisoned compliments." Shelley Fabares, the gentle muse on American television. But to Annette, she was a smile next to blood. Was the applause when you were replaced. And the most painful thing, Annette knew, Shelley liked that feeling. But that was not the final wound. When the next man enters her life, not to love her, but to scar her for life, things get even more brutal. Do you dare to listen? The next part will take you into the deepest darkness of Annette's life. And now, the fourth name, no longer a co-star, no longer a colleague. But the man Annette dreamed of every night, only to wake up in a nightmare that never ended. A love that never came to fruition. A love song, and a sentence more poisonous than a curse. And from that, Annette never forgave. Paul Anka, the dream lover of millions of American girls. But to Annette, he was a death sentence written in melody. Annette never called Paul lover, not on stage, not in her diary, not in any interview in her life. But she never denied it either. Because the truth is always hidden in the things that are not said. The quiet nights behind the scenes, the whispers in the hallways, the stolen glances, not for the public. And it is that silence that breaks the heart. When Paul Anka wrote Puppy Love, all of America shuddered, believing that it was for Annette. But Annette, the only one who knew the truth, gritted her teeth and kept quiet. "I wasn't the love interest in that song. I was just a name that was big enough to sell 1 million records." At first, she believed Paul was different. Not like Frankie, not like those Hollywood directors. Paul was charming, talented, and his words flowed like honey through his heart. But then, one night in Palm Springs, she saw him backstage, hugging a blonde model. In his hand was the same birthday card she'd given him that afternoon. That night, Annette went back to her room and tore up each unsent letter. No one knew. No one heard her cry. But later, she left a line, "I loved a song, not a man." I loved the idea of Paul, but Paul loved himself. A few years later, in 1971, a reporter asked on television, "Did you ever really love Annette Funicello?" Paul laughed, half serious, half contemptuous, "She's the kind of girl everyone wants to marry, but no one wants to date." The remark spread through Hollywood like wildfire, and for Annette, it wasn't just an insult. It was a blow to whatever self-esteem she had left. "You turned me into a love song. But in real life, I'm not attractive enough to hold hands with. I'm just a byproduct of a tune you used to sell records." Paul Anka, the heart of American pop in the 60s. But for Annette, he was the first scratch that made her blood never freeze. He never apologized, because in the world of male stars, women are just material, never the main character. And Paul was the first person to make Annette understand one thing: loving the wrong person, not just once, but for life. But if you think the story is over, you're wrong. The last name doesn't come from the stage, doesn't come from the music, but from the coldest darkness of the Disney empire. A co-star who seemed close, a victim who seemed to have overcome, and a mirror of Annette's deepest fears, about herself. Are you ready to hear about the fifth name, the ultimate obsession that Hollywood always tries to bury deep? Press follow and enter the darkest part of the story, if you dare. I didn't dare look, not because I didn't see, but because I knew, if I looked straight, I would see myself. Tommy Kirk, Annette's closest co-star during the Disney years. The studio's golden boy, face as sweet as cotton candy, smile like the first sunshine of spring. The ideal boy that America had fallen in love with through The Shaggy Dog, Swiss Family Robinson, and a host of other legends. But then, one day, the secret was revealed: Tommy was gay. And that was enough for Disney to throw him away like a broken toy, no warning, no chance to make things right. Just the coldness of a torn contract, and the averted eyes of those who once called him family. Annette stood there, witnessing it all, and she was silent. I didn't dare speak up to defend you, because I knew, if I did, the next one to fall would be me. Not because she hated Tommy, but because he made her face the most terrible thing, the cowardice in her own heart. Tommy was the first crack in the glass mirror called Disney Ideal. Proof that the light in Hollywood is never real. It is just a mask painted with fear, control, and things not allowed to be said. Annette never spoke ill of Tommy, never denied him, but she also could not forgive herself for leaving him alone in the dark. He is a reminder that even smiling in front of millions, I am still not free. 5 names, 5 wounds, not a single apology, not a single healing. Annette Funicello, America's sweetest princess, left this world with a single smile, and 5 deep bleeding cuts in her heart. And now, do you still believe in Hollywood? Or have you realized, it is in the brightest places, that the shadows are deepest, and the most beautiful smiles, are sometimes painted with blood? Annette's story is over, but how many other stars have smiled to hide a hell behind the scenes? Stay tuned, because we will continue to expose the false light, and tell the truths that Hollywood would rather bury forever.